So, obviously, opportunities in South Africa and specifically on the construction sector is what we're going to be talking about today. To give you a bit of background first, obviously, on UKTI and UK Trade and Investment and what it is that we do. UK Trade and Investment is the commercial arm of the British government. We are based in over 100 markets across the world. Specifically in South Africa, we have a presence in Johannesburg and in Cape Town, but we do look after the whole of the country. As part of the UK government's ambitions, it's obviously the main focus is around doubling our exports to 1 trillion by 2020. 1 in 4 UK companies to export rather than 1 in 5 at present, and becoming the number 1 location for European investment for international companies. UKTI's mission is to support companies to grow their business through international trade, connecting businesses to the world's top commercial opportunities and establishing whole of business government relationships to exports and investment. And like I said, on the inward investment side, to increase inward investment to the UK. So that's essentially helping international firms setting up in the local country, in the UK. UKTI has a massive presence, obviously, across the world, like I said, over 100 markets, with specialists in market helping put UK companies in touch with the local, whether it's business contacts, whether it's local government. But further to that, we obviously have our colleagues who are based in market who are here to support and nurture and grow businesses and help them to export. And our objective is obviously to help 50,000 companies a year by 2015. 80% ensuring customers report positively on quality UKTI services. So, moving on to today's topic, which is on South Africa and inspiring new ways. So, why South Africa? South Africa as a market has a number of very key strengths, and UK companies will look at South Africa for a number of reasons. To give you all a little bit of background as to why South Africa is such a key market, some of the key sectors in South Africa obviously range from agriculture, manufacturing, construction, through to sectors such as the finance, real estate, business services. Again, it's a very well-developed market. While in many regards it's seen as still as a developing market, and it has faced a number of third world challenges, it's still very much seen as a first world economy, and it has very well-developed markets in a number of other senses. It has a GDP of 260 billion. It's the most diverse and developed economy in Africa. And while South Africa only takes up 3% of the actual African continent, it makes up 25% of Africa's entire GDP. So that really gives you a sense of the sheer scale and size of the country and the economy as a whole. As cliched as it may sound, South Africa is very much a gateway to other sub-Saharan African markets. So a lot of companies across various sectors, whether it's ICT, whether it's construction, whether it's retail, use South Africa as a base. So they'll springboard then from South Africa into the rest of the region, into the rest of the continent. English is the main business language. Time zone of no more than 2 hours. So in your UK winter, it's 2 hours time difference, and very similar legal and financial systems in South Africa. And the Johannesburg Stock Exchange ranks amongst the top 10 in the world. Again, all of these factors just contributing to what makes South Africa a strong market. In terms of the trading relationship with South Africa, the UK and South Africa have an annual trading bilateral trade of around £9 billion a year. Knowledgeable and proficient, as I mentioned, our UKTI presence, we have a team of around 25 people in country based in Johannesburg and in Cape Town. Further to that, there's been a strong shift, and we've seen a number of key ministerial visits, both to the UK and from the UK to South Africa, including the Prime Minister's trade envoy, Baroness Patricia Scotland, who's very much driving the trade agenda between the UK and South Africa. The British Chamber of Business, also newly established, been running now for about 1.5 years, 2 years, again, just to facilitate trade and to help grow British business in South Africa. Some of the major opportunities for British businesses in South Africa are around some of the 4 following sectors, particularly in the power and renewable energy spaces, infrastructure, which I'm going to talk to you all a little bit about just now, as well as healthcare and education. Looking at the SWOT analysis, so in terms of South Africa's strengths, South Africa is a very resource-rich country. So we're sitting on massive reserves of platinum, gold, coal, diamonds, various mineral sands, and so we've got a very strong mining industry in South Africa. Further to that, there's obviously also the agricultural sectors and believed to be huge gas deposits also, which exist both onshore and offshore. We've got a very well-established and modern infrastructure in South Africa. So this includes the ICT, the ports and harbors, the rail services, telecommunications. Again, it all just leads to that general ease of doing business. I did allude to it earlier, but the strong legal and financial frameworks in South Africa and the very strong Johannesburg Stock Exchange, again, create that business-friendly environment. And again, accountability of private institutions, and more on the retail side, but it's across various sectors, the growing black middle class. In terms of weaknesses, the exchange rate is probably one of the key ones at the moment. So South Africa Rand has devalued probably from about 4 years ago from 10 Rand to one pound to at the moment current levels of around 22 Rand to £1. So this gives you a real sense of the challenges then for companies that are potentially exporting may face in terms of that huge disparity in terms of the prices. Having said that though, I think South Africa, because of the long-term trading links between the UK and South Africa, South Africans are very aware of the quality that comes with UK products, and so they're aware of the pricing factor there. Power supply has been another real challenge, and I'll come to that as a major topic in a little while. But on power particularly, the security of power and security of energy has been a challenge for certain sectors. High unemployment and labor relations, again, as a developing country, faces real challenges here. And that links into obviously the skills capacity and shortage and economic integration and poverty, which obviously leads to social issues and social impacts such as crime and disease and such as HIV. And then also on while we do have a very well-developed infrastructure network in South Africa, there are bottlenecks in the energy and transport and water due to years of underinvestment. Some of the political considerations that UK companies need to keep in mind when looking at South Africa as a market. The first one is broad-based black economic empowerment. Now, BBBEE, as it's also referred to, is a policy that was introduced at the end of apartheid. Essentially, it was a legislation introduced to readdress some of the imbalances in South Africa's history. So what you used to have was the white minority in control of the vast majority of the economy and industry, and BEE essentially was introduced to readdress these imbalances and bring about social integration and economic integration. There's a number of different ways that a company can go about building a BEE scorecard and rating. This ranges from ownership through to number of black staff, black management, procurement, so preferential procurement, things like skills development, training, mentorship programs. So there's a number of different elements. It's not mandatory, so it's totally up to a company to whether or not they wish to embrace it. However, what we have seen is certainly that UK companies that have entered the market and that have embraced it and built it into part of their strategy have certainly seen the benefit and reaped the rewards as a result. This is particularly true for those companies that are working within government sectors, so with state-owned entities, such as within the energy, within the transportation sector, particularly true. And so really worth speaking to specialists, understanding what the best fit method is for your particular company. Something else worth keeping in mind also, black is quite a broad term in this regard. It refers to black South Africans, Indian South Africans, and coloured South Africans. That's South Africans of mixed race. South Africa is a young, relatively stable multi-party democracy dominated by one political party, which is the African National Congress. And the next general election is in 2019. Looking at some of the economic considerations, I won't read this all out to you, but essentially the World Bank's 2015 Ease of Doing Business, we'd fallen from 41st to 43rd. The reason for this was due to the energy challenges that the country is facing. Again, I'll go into a little bit more information on this. But again, key areas of strength include the business startup, registering property, trading across borders, and essentially enforcing contracts and paying taxes. The South African government has introduced what's known as the National Development Plan. Essentially, the National Development Plan, or NDP, is a roadmap for the country to grow the economy, to reduce unemployment, and to essentially create jobs. So it's quite a bold and ambitious plan. Really, it cuts across various sectors, but it's in its implementation at the moment, and really is being fully embraced by from the president right across government. And it's one of those. It's essentially a roadmap to run for the country for the next 20 odd years, so up until 2030 and post, and essentially across various sectors. And South Africa will be a dramatically different place if all the ambitions are realized. Macroeconomic policy of the largest infrastructure-led growth. Again, I'll talk a little bit about this. And job creation is a priority. Where we're sitting with unemployment levels in South Africa at the moment of around about 25%, it really is one of the key factors for South African government at the moment. The business environment is challenging, but still one of the best in the developing world. So, the exciting stuff and why we're all here today, talking about infrastructure. South Africa has around 90 billion pounds worth of infrastructure opportunities, which are at the moment in the pipeline, and I'll go into a bit more detail on this. But further to that, there's around 230 billion pounds worth of future projects. Now, the reason for the slight gap there is because obviously there's a number of projects which are in the pipeline, have been agreed and approved and are being worked on, or at least being implemented. And further to that, there's 230 billion pounds, as I mentioned, on projects which are in the pipeline. So they're at a feasibility stage, they're under consideration, or they're being at a point of where they're looking for public-private participation and essentially looking at being rolled out. So what we had was, leading up to the World Cup, obviously, tremendous amount of infrastructure, huge amount to spend on the stadia, on airports, projects such as the Gautrain, the rapid rail link between Johannesburg and Pretoria. And following on from that, there was quite a dip in the infrastructure spend. Since then, there's been a real realization from government that we need to invest dramatically in our infrastructure as a country. Some of the key areas of investment really for South Africa, the biggest obviously being on power and energy. Water, again, another big area for investment from the country. But further to that, aspects such as rail and ports. So you've got parastatals such as Transnet, which is the major parastatal responsible for the ports and rail sectors, as well as PRASA, which is the Passenger Rail Association, which is obviously looking after the passenger rail. Again, huge budgets, huge projects across their portfolios. Hospitals and healthcare facilities, again, I'll talk a little bit more about that, but again, updating and upgrading a lot of the major hospitals in the country. A number of those projects are through PPPs. And again, South Africa has a very well-developed private sector hospitals, as well as then the state healthcare facilities. Schools and universities, again, education is a major priority for the country, and as such, the government has committed a large amount of funds to the schools and universities. Roads, urban generation projects, and low-cost housing are some of the other areas on focus for South Africa. So while there has been as you can see, a huge pipeline of new projects, I think one of the biggest challenges and frustrations for companies, both within South Africa as well as companies looking to get into market, has been that there's been a lack of implementation. So there's a bit of bureaucracy and the lack of implementation. So while we know that there's X billion set aside for hospitals or for power projects or for water projects, the problem has been that there's been a lack of decision making, lack of implementation. However, I think out of necessity, a lot of these projects are now being pushed forward. The president, from the presidential level of the president anyway, there's an entity was set up known as the Presidential Infrastructure Coordinating Commission, and essentially the PICC, as it's known, is driving forward a number of these key projects. They've pulled them together into the strategic integrated projects, and they're managing these forward, and essentially driving a number of the focus areas. Energy, as I mentioned earlier, has been one of the real challenges in South Africa, for a number of reasons. From about the 90s, South Africa had stopped investing in energy as a country. This meant that as our economy boomed during the 90s and onwards into the early 2000s, we obviously had a lack of investment in new energy infrastructure, and so the demand far exceeded the actual available supply. So come 2008, we had a case of rolling blackouts, and it was a real problem for us as a country. What this meant was that government got together with private sector. They pulled together what is known as the Integrated Resources Plan 2010, and essentially this maps out the country's plans going forward, energy plans going forward for the next 20 years. So as a result of that, 2 new coal-fired power stations are currently being built, Kusile and Medupi. Further to that, one of the most ambitious and very, very well thought out, it's known as the RE, Renewable Energy Integrated Independent Power Producers Program. Dare to say that 5 times over really fast. And essentially, as a result of that, major solar projects, major wind projects, and further to that, the government has got ambitions and plans as part of the RRP plan to really build in a nuclear plan worth £80 billion, which will be in around 9.6 gigawatts of nuclear power if it goes ahead. Again, there's been a bit of contention about the price tag linked to the nuclear power program, as well as whether it really is a necessity for the country. Further to that, gas, again, another major factor. Gas, South Africa is believed to be sitting on major shale gas reserves in the Karoo. So gas is very likely to make up another part of South Africa's energy program. So going forward, South Africa really will see still a tremendous amount of investment in the energy infrastructure. Some of the major opportunities we have in the energy sector, specifically around innovative funding solutions, again, looking at the funding models for the various energy programs that we're looking at, novel maintenance solutions, innovative demand and supply, and skills, technology and transfer. One of the key factors that I did mention before, especially for companies looking to deal within the energy environment, is particularly around localization, black economic empowerment, local partnership. Again, it's a huge priority, and especially when dealing with the likes of the energy parastatal Eskom in South Africa. On the legal services, again, I'll touch on this very briefly just to give you an idea of the developed nature of the legal system in South Africa. It has a very well developed, established legal system. Roman Dutch law is the main legal system in South Africa, but it's significantly influenced by English common law. Foreign lawyers need to requalify to practice in South Africa, but operate locally, focusing on cross-border work. On the ICT side of things, again, it's another area that the government is committing a huge amount of money to and large investment and spending. And some of the key opportunities that we as UKTI are focusing on are around, particularly on the smart cities, with the major ICT element. Again, cities like Johannesburg, like Cape Town, like Pretoria, and even Durban. Durban in particular now, after having been won and having been nominated for the 2022 Commonwealth Games. Again, a lot of the cities in South Africa look at really developing these integrated cities, bringing together whether it's transportation, whether it's the smart grids, so really making sure we have smart cities at the forefront. ICT in education, the square kilometre array, which is in the Karoo region, Northern Cape, and ICT in rural development. Healthcare, again, I did mention a little bit about the investment that the government is putting into the healthcare sector, so into new hospitals, training facilities, the nursing homes, clinics really across the country. Again, like I mentioned, we've got some of the major hospitals like the Chris Hani Baragwanath in Johannesburg, which are massive refurbishment projects, and again, likely to fall under PPP models for these projects. Looking at education, again, like I said, education is another major factor in South Africa, a huge opportunity area essentially for UK companies in this sector. Despite South African government spending over 20% of their GDP on education, it's still one of the major challenges the country faces. So due to poor schooling, lack of infrastructure in many regards, it's still one of the major challenges for the country. So as a result, some of our major opportunities are around basic education tools, but obviously then also looking at building of new schools and universities, like I mentioned previously. So we work with a number of companies in South Africa, UK companies, across various sectors. As you can see there, you get quite a broad spectrum and real idea of some of the major multinationals we work with, from multinationals right down to SMEs. Some real household names there that we work with on a regular basis. And in terms really of how we support and can support you as a UK business, I mean, really happy to talk to you more after this presentation, but essentially it ranges from inward trade missions to South Africa, working with the likes of UK Export Finance, providing you with bespoke research report, tailor-made visit programs, so really a number of different key areas. One of the other aspects worth mentioning is that UKTI South Africa is now focused a lot more regionally. So we have actually now got 2 or 3 people now on our team who are focusing not just on South Africa, but on the wider region. The reason for this is come out of necessity. So we've got a number of our key clients in South Africa that are expanding into the wider region. Tremendous amount of growth, tremendous amount of opportunity, growing middle classes. Take Mozambique, for example, huge deposits of gas obviously that have been found. And as a result of that, growing economy is absolutely booming. It's just looking at how do we further support our clients at the end of the day to grow into some of these markets. UKTI has a presence in the top 6 markets, obviously in South Africa and Joburg, as I mentioned, but we're in Namibia, Zambia, Angola, Mozambique, Mauritius, but we also provide the softer support for some of the other countries like Botswana, like Zimbabwe, like Madagascar, the Seychelles, Malawi, and the DRC.
Good afternoon, my name's Neal Brown. I'm a UKTI International Trade Advisor working in the UK. So Jonathan is our international arm and I'm the UK arm. Some of you may be aware that UKTI works through a number of regions in the UK. So I'm actually from Sheffield, up in Yorkshire, and work with a team of about 30 separate international trade advisors there. All of us working with SMEs, medium-sized businesses, to support them in their export planning and development of strategies to achieve success in international markets. So typically we'd be working with people like Jonathan all across the globe, helping them to identify opportunities and, as I say, win more business. Jonathan's touched on some of the programs that we work through. Our flagship program is our Passport to Export program, and through that we support companies that are new to export. But we provide access to a range of support facilities, helping with research, helping companies develop their websites for international trade, supporting them around trade missions, and also events typically such as this that take place throughout the world, trade shows, where providing access to distributors and agents and other means of accessing opportunities in those markets. So it's a wide range of services that UKTI provides. More than happy to come and meet with companies in the UK, spend some time with you, assist you in your planning, and of course then help you to get out to markets overseas and to meet with people like Jonathan. So if you'd like to talk to us, we're more than happy to assist, give you more information. Jonathan, obviously with regard to South Africa, and from my perspective with regard to how we can help you in the UK. So thank you for your time, thank you for listening. Jonathan, thank you for coming from South Africa, and happy to discuss if you have any questions. Thank you.